There is a force more dangerous than greed, more destructive than hatred, and more invisible than any conspiracy ever devised by the minds of powerful men. It doesn't wear a mask. It doesn't announce itself. It sits next to you at the dinner table, votes in every election, runs companies, passes laws, and sometimes, if you're honest with yourself, it looks back at you in the mirror. Carlo Cipolla, an Italian economic historian who spent decades studying the rise and fall of civilizations, once wrote something that most academics refused to take seriously, not because it was wrong, but because it was too right. He called it the basic laws of human stupidity. And the third law, the one we rarely talk about, the one that quietly dismantles everything we build together, that is what we are here to confront today. Cipolla defined a stupid person not as someone with a low IQ, not as someone uneducated or poorly raised, but as someone who consistently causes harm to others while gaining nothing, or worse, while causing harm to themselves in the very same act. Read that again. A stupid person in his framework is not defined by ignorance. They are defined by the mathematics of their actions, negative output for everyone involved, including themselves. And the third law states, with unsettling calm, that stupid people always underestimate the number of stupid individuals in circulation. We never see how many there are. We are never prepared for what they can do. Now, before you lean back and nod along thinking this is about someone else, your neighbor, your politician, your colleague, I want to stop you right there. Because the uncomfortable brilliance of Cipolla's insight is that stupidity, in this sense, is not a fixed trait. It is a behavior, it is a pattern, and it is one that every single one of us enters into at some point in our lives under the right circumstances. The question is not whether you have ever been stupid in this way. The question is whether you are willing to recognize the moments when you were, and more importantly, the moments when you are about to be again. History is not shaped only by great villains with calculated evil intentions. It is shaped over and over by the silent avalanche of pointless, self-defeating actions. Empires that taxed their citizens into poverty while gaining nothing in military strength. Companies that destroyed consumer trust for a quarterly gain so small it barely registered. Individuals who burned bridges, sabotaged relationships, ruined opportunities, not out of malice, not out of strategy, but out of something far more ordinary. The third law doesn't require a monster. It requires only the person who in that moment stopped thinking about consequences, theirs or anyone else's. Think about a time you witnessed someone make a decision that hurt you, and when you traced it back, also hurt them. Maybe a manager who micromanaged their best employee until that employee left, and then watched the whole project collapse. Maybe a friend who spread a rumor, lost the friendship, and gained absolutely nothing from the wreckage. You probably felt a specific kind of bewilderment in those moments. Not anger exactly, but something closer to vertigo, because the damage made no sense. There was no logic of benefit behind it. That vertigo is the feeling of encountering Cipolla's third law in action. And here is what makes it so catastrophically dangerous at scale. Rational systems, economies, governments, communities, institutions, are designed to anticipate rational opposition. They build defenses against greed. They have laws against malice. They negotiate with self-interest, but they have no real mechanism for the actor who gains nothing and destroys anyway. That is a variable that breaks the equation entirely. If this idea is already resonating somewhere inside you, if you are beginning to sense just how quietly this operates in the world around you, stay with me. Because what comes next goes deeper than sociology. It goes into something personal, something most of us have never been asked to look at directly. Why does this happen? Why do human beings, capable of art, of love, of scientific discovery, routinely engage in behaviors that leave everyone, including themselves, worse off? Psychology offers several answers, and none of them are flattering, but all of them are compassionate in their honesty. The first is what researchers call ego depletion. When we are mentally exhausted, emotionally drained, or simply overwhelmed, our capacity for rational foresight collapses. We stop calculating consequences. We act from reflex, from wound, from the part of the brain that only knows the present moment and the immediate itch of relief. The second is something even more primal, the psychology of status threat. Studies consistently show that when human beings feel diminished, overlooked, or disrespected, the brain activates threat response circuits that override long-term thinking. We don't ask, what do I gain? We ask, how do I stop feeling this way right now? And sometimes the answer the lizard brain provides is, tear something down, it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter who. This is why stupidity, in Cipolla's sense, is not a class issue, not an education issue, not an intelligence issue. It is a human issue. The executive with 3 degrees who destroys a company's reputation over a wounded ego. The neighbor with a beautiful house who files a pointless lawsuit that costs both sides thousands and changes nothing. The voter who elects someone they know will hurt them, simply because that person promises to also hurt the people the voter resents. These are not stupid people in the conventional sense. They are people in the grip of something that bypasses intelligence entirely, and that, perhaps, is the most sobering truth of all. Now, if you're still here, and I hope you are, let me offer you something more than a diagnosis, because Cipolla's framework, as bleak as it sounds, contains within it a hidden map. If you understand the third law deeply, not just intellectually but viscerally, it changes the way you move through the world. It changes who you trust, how you design systems, how you make decisions, and most crucially, how you catch yourself before you become the variable that breaks the equation. The first shift is recognition, not of others, of yourself. There is a practice, borrowed from Stoic philosophy and refined by modern cognitive behavioral therapy, called the pause of consequence. Before any significant action, especially one made in emotional heat, you stop and ask a single question. Who gains from this and who loses? Not as an abstract moral exercise, but as a cold, precise calculation. If the honest answer is nobody gains, and multiple people, as including me, lose something, then you are standing at the threshold of the third law. You are about to enter it, and the moment you can name that, you have already begun to step back from it. The second shift is structural. If you lead a team, build a community, raise children, or design any kind of system, the wisdom of Cipolla's work is not to find and eliminate the stupid actors. That is both impossible and itself a form of the same affliction. The wisdom is to build environments where the cost of pointless, self-defeating behavior is immediate and visible. Transparency is not just a corporate value, it is a civilizational technology. When people can see the consequences of their actions, reflected back to them quickly and clearly, the feedback loop that stupidity requires, invisibility, diffusion, delay, is broken. The third shift is the hardest. It requires something that our culture rarely rewards, the willingness to look foolish in the short term to avoid being catastrophic in the long term. Cipolla noted that among the 4 types of people in his model, the helpless, the intelligent, the bandit, and the stupid, only the intelligent consistently produce net positive outcomes for themselves and others, and the defining characteristic of the intelligent actor is not cleverness. It is the sustained capacity to consider other people's outcomes alongside their own. That is it. That is the entire secret. Empathy is not a soft skill. In the mathematics of civilization, it is the hardest computation we are capable of, and the one that determines whether societies survive. But here is what almost nobody tells you. Here is the deeper current running beneath all of this. The third law of human stupidity does not only describe individuals, it describes systems. It describes moments in history when entire cultures entered a collective stupidity, a shared trance of self-defeating action so wide and so normalized that no one inside it could see it from the outside. Every great collapse in history has this fingerprint. A population that began making choices that harmed everyone, including themselves, for reasons that seemed, to them, in that moment, completely rational, even righteous. The Roman decline, the implosion of entire financial systems, the cultural revolutions that devoured their own children. The third law at scale is not a tragedy of evil, it is a tragedy of lost perspective, and perspective, once lost collectively, is the hardest thing in the world to recover. So what do we do with this? We start here, we start small. We start with the uncomfortable, unglamorous, deeply necessary act of asking ourselves, honestly without the armor of justification, whether the things we do, the things we say, the choices we make in anger or fear or wound, are producing anything real for anyone at all. We ask whether we are building or merely reacting, whether we are thinking forward or only feeling backward, and we commit, quietly, privately, to the daily practice of choosing the calculation over the reflex, the consequence over the impulse, the whole picture over the furious pixel that has our attention right now. Cipolla died in 2000, and he never became famous the way he deserved. But his third law has outlived him, because it describes something eternal about us, not as a condemnation, but as a challenge. The stupidity he named is not our fate, it is our default. And the distance between a default and a destiny is exactly the width of one conscious choice. You already took one today. You stopped, you listened, you let yourself be uncomfortable. That is not a small thing. In the mathematics of civilization, that is everything. If this found something real in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment. Tell me a moment when you caught yourself at that threshold. And subscribe, because this journey into the deeper mechanics of human behavior is only just beginning. The next idea is already waiting. And I promise you, it goes even further than this one.